The NHL Trade Deadline is just days away. We'll talk about some possible targets for the New York Islanders and what it might cost them. We've got all that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. We've got a lot to discuss on today's show. An exciting time of year as the trade deadline is Friday. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. And you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars NYR VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all season long. And I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. Join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Trade deadline is Friday afternoon. It is just a handful of days away. And look, let's face it, the Islanders' 3-game winning streak that they are now on is definitely incentive for Lou Lamoriello to buy at the trade deadline. Not that Lou Lamoriello ever really needed incentive to buy at the trade deadline. And, entering Monday night, the Islanders were 5 points behind the Flyers for the last playoff spot with 2 games in hand, and 6 points behind the Lightning with 6 points behind with 3 games in hand, and they were 6 points behind the Red Wings with 1 game in hand. And oh yeah, by the way, as far as the Red Wings are concerned, they are dealing with an injury to Dylan Larkin. He's going to miss 2 weeks, according to many reports, due to a lower body injury that was announced on Monday, and that certainly hurts the Detroit Red Wings. So right now, after this winning streak, the Islanders' chances are not impossible. Behind the Islanders right now, the Capitals are just 1 point behind. The Devils, 2 points behind. The Islanders have a game in hand. And oh yeah, the Devils, they just fired their head coach. And surprise, surprise, by the way, we have a former Islander now taking over as head coach of the New Jersey Devils. So that's always, a little interesting, to say the least, as, Travis Green is named interim head coach, certainly someone with some experience there and someone that Islander fans are all too familiar with. So we'll see, how this plays out down the stretch. But the Islanders are in the thick of this race, and they need to perform well. Here's what stands between the Islanders and a potential playoff spot more than anything: consistency. And let's face it, the only thing the Islanders have done consistently all season is play inconsistent hockey. They've got to be consistent down the stretch with 22 games left on the schedule, including a game tonight against the St. Louis Blues that starts at 7:30. And again, you can hear every minute of that game with the Islanders hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Go to the SXM app and do a search for Islanders. But this is there for the taking for the New York Islanders. The question is whether they can be consistent enough to take it. And look, we know what this team kind of needs. There's very little doubt about that. The question is, what will it cost to get the players they need, and how do they fit in? And keep in mind a few things. Lou Lamoriello does not like rentals. So if he's going to acquire a player, he's not going to just say, okay, this is a guy who's going to be on our team for the next 6 weeks, and then if we make the playoffs, for the playoffs. He wants to add, years to the guy's term because he wants him to fit in with where the Islanders are going in the future. He wants them to be a longer-term part of the team. There are difficulties there between no trade clauses, modified no trade clauses, a lack of cap space. The Islanders, if they place, for example, Scott Mayfield on LTIR or Matt Martin on LTIR, they could easily free up some cap space to make a moderate to mid-tier acquisition based on salary cap. But you got to figure that in order to trade away, to acquire someone, they have to trade somebody away. And it's got to be somebody with some cap space to free up, because otherwise, well, it just means, obviously, even if you squeeze it in by placing a couple of guys on LTIR this year, you then have to make more moves before next year in order to make it work. Couple of names that have been bandied about by different places. One of them, and everydayers, we talked about this last week, Vladimir Tarasenko. Not thrilled with Tarasenko. And I don't think it's realistic that the Islanders would be getting him. Why? Well, he's got a $5 million cap hit. He's 32 years old. If Lou Lamoriello is going to sign a 32-year-old forward to a contract extension for, it's got to be a minimum of 2 years, I would think, you got to expect diminishing returns, and I don't think the Islanders necessarily need another 30-something forward. And the other thing about Tarasenko, a lot of the other contenders are interested in him, probably more as a rental than as a long-term solution. So the Rangers are also rumored to be in. Edmonton possibly inquiring about Vladimir Tarasenko. And the cost for Tarasenko that the Ottawa Senators are supposedly looking for is a second-round pick and a prospect. Well, the Islanders have the second-round pick. They don't have a third, but they got the second. But the question is, do the Islanders have a prospect that would interest the Ottawa Senators? And it's not just a prospect that would interest the Senators. It's a prospect that would interest the Senators more than anybody that these other teams who are also rumored to be interested in Tarasenko could put together in their package for the player. So I don't think Tarasenko is necessarily a strong candidate to be a New York Islander. Another possibility, former Islanders, two of them. One is Jordan Eberle. Again, he's on an expiring contract. He's got the $5.5 million cap hit. Yeah, the Kraken, where he's playing now, certainly could and can afford to keep him. But again, Do you want to sign a 33-year-old forward who was a good Islander for the seasons that he was here? But realistically, I don't think that's the kind of player you want to sign to an extension right now at this stage of his career. Another former Islander that I've heard bandied about as a possibility that I think does not make a lot of sense is Anthony Beauvillier. And the good news about Bo is he's not over 30. He's not that expensive right now. He's got a cap hit of a little more than $4 million. The Blackhawks can and probably would retain some salary, but here's the deal. Beauvillier in 43 games this year, 4 goals, 14 points. He does have a little speed, and that's something Patrick Roy is looking for, but I just don't think Beauvillier moves the needle all that much. And unless you're giving up, a 4th or a 5th round draft pick, and then you're going to sign Anthony Beauvillier to be part of this team again for the future, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. A guy who I think makes a little more sense, well, we're going to continue this conversation and talk about some more forwards and defensemen that the Islanders might be able to acquire. We've got that, a couple of injury updates, and a preview of tonight's game against the Blues. Plus, for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a player who had 2 stints with the Islanders, but his career was cut short by an injury. We'll talk about that, see if you can guess who it is. He played with the Islanders in the late 90s and then again in the mid to late 2000s. All that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Sleeper. We are past the halfway mark of the season, Islander fans, and I want to remind you that you could win big playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Sorokin, McDavid, or McKinnon will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Islander fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So some players that I think make more sense than these older guys who I mentioned early on in the process. And again, those guys are not bad players. I'm not saying they couldn't help the Islanders, but boy, the way Lou Lamoriello likes to operate, it just to me doesn't make sense. It makes the team more skilled, but it makes them older, and that's not good. Now, if Patrick Roy has been talking about wanting more speed, to me, a player who's available and probably won't cost a lot is San Jose Sharks winger Anthony Duclair. Duclair played with Patrick Roy in juniors in Quebec. He has 14 goals and 9 assists in 55 games playing for a struggling San Jose Sharks team. 28 years old, $3 million cap hit. Here's a guy you wouldn't mind adding to the lineup. He can give you, he could pretty much play on any line depending on how you want to fit him in. And I think it makes some sense, but we have to see, again, you got to figure the Sharks are looking for prospects and picks. Those are two things the Islanders don't have in abundance. Another possibility is Frank Vetrano. He is with the Anaheim Ducks, 29 years old. He's got 29 goals and 48 points in 61 games. He is going to be a hot target because of that goal scoring. He's got a $3.65 million cap hit and is signed through next year. This is his career best year. It means that he's got the speed, he's got a good shot, and he's a guy you could put on either of your top two lines. The only sort of maybe drawback to Vetrano is the cost factor. He is going to be expensive without a doubt because he is going to be with 29 goals, very in demand. And, to me, it just makes it harder for the Islanders to pull off that deal. But again, Vetrano, certainly attractive and somebody that this team could be interested in adding. A couple of other forwards to talk about. Jason Zucker, he is out in Arizona, and he would be not so much a scoring guy, but a guy who would add grit. He has that $5.3 million cap hit. But again, 9 goals, 16 assists, a pending, free agent doesn't seem to me like the best fit. He would be a bottom 6 guy. To me, he's out there. It's possible he could help the team a little bit, but I don't think it makes a lot of sense. A guy who makes more sense, Shane Pinto. He is a center, though, and the Islanders have 6 of them right now on their current roster. But boy, would he fit in as a more logical second-line center. He's a Long Island native. He's only 23. He's got, 16 points in his last 18 games after missing the first half of this season for sports gambling. But here's the problem. You got to think that the Senators would want to hold on to him because he's young and he's talented and he's scoring. So we'll see whether or not, the Islanders would be able to afford what the Senators want in exchange for Pinto. I'd love to get him. You'd probably be trading away J.G. Pageau back to Ottawa along with something else if they're interested in J.G. Pageau, and I don't know that they are. Casey Middlestat, another possibility, only 25, former first-round pick, top 10 pick. He is an RFA coming up this year. Current cap hit, $2.5 million, but he's arbitration eligible. And I know Lou Lamoriello would not want to go to arbitration. He's got 14 goals and 57 points right now through 62 games. And again, he would slot in nicely as a second-line center and a player you wouldn't mind re-signing to a deal. Now, some defensemen, and there aren't as many. Noah Hannafin is out there. I think he's going to be a little too expensive. And right now he is the best probably defenseman available. I can't see either him or Jacob Chychrun, being in the Islanders' plans only because, again, the cap hit is high. The demand is high. These are probably the 2 most in-demand offensive defensemen going. Chychrun is not going to be a UFA. So, he's signed through next season. He'd be a great addition to the Islanders' blue line, but I can't imagine the Islanders picking up the $4.6 million cap hit. He's also a left shot defenseman. And, the Islanders probably need a little more help on the right side. But those are some of the names that are out there right now. You can certainly let me know via email or comments on YouTube or on X. who interests you the most and what you realistically think it would cost to get that player. Not going to be easy because of the Islanders' lack of assets, both in the form of picks and prospects, and the fact that a lot of the veterans they have, well, not great contracts. One injury update that I did want to get to, and that is that the Islanders had Samuel Bolduc rejoin the team for practice now that his conditioning stint with Bridgeport is over. Let's see whether or not he is going to return to the lineup and be activated off LTIR anytime soon. He played 5 games for Bridgeport, had a goal and 14 shots on goal in those 5 games. Not sure whether or not he's going to be activated. And I get the feeling Bolduc gets activated off LTIR after whatever move the Islanders are going to make gets made. If there is none, it may depend on, the Scott Mayfield situation and a few other things injury-wise. No update on Matt Martin, who again left Saturday's game early. We will keep you up to date as soon as we hear something. More to get to on today's show. We'll preview tonight's game against the Blues. Again, 7:30 Eastern time, and you can hear every minute of that game with the Islanders' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just go to the SXM app and search for Islanders. We'll have that. We'll have our Islanders birthday of the day and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So tonight at the UBS Arena, Islanders hosting the St. Louis Blues. The good news, the Blues are playing Monday, so they are in a back-to-back. The Islanders haven't played since Saturday. Jordan Binnington playing for the Blues against the Flyers Monday. So likely Joel Hofer, their backup goalie, is going to be in between the pipes against the Islanders. Hofer, 10-10-0 in 19 starts, a .288 goals against average, and a .910 save percentage. Amazingly, his numbers almost identical to Jordan Binnington. We talked about the Blues recently. They are a top-heavy team, but they do have 6 guys with some nice goal totals, led by Pavel Buchnevich with 24 goals. Robert Thomas has 20. Jake Neighbors has 20. 19 for Jordan Kyrou. 17 for Brandon Saad. So there is a little balance, but the bottom 6 kind of struggles right now. They are 25th in goals scored, but only 14th in goals against. So the defense better than the offense. Blues power play really struggling. They're 25th in the league. The penalty kill, middle of the pack at 15th. So again, Islanders need to stay out of the box, but not as urgent as it was when you're talking about some of the better teams they faced this year. The line combinations for the Blues: Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich, and Jordan Kyrou are the top trio. Braden Shen centers Brandon Saad and Jake Neighbors on the second line. Kevin Hayes, Zachary Bolduc, and Alexei Toropchenko. That's the third line. And from left to right on the fourth line, Nathan Walker, Oscar Sundqvist, and Kasperi Kapanen. On the blue line, former Islander Nick Leddy is paired with Colton Parayko. That's the top pairing. Torrey Krug and Justin Falk are the second pair. And then Marco Scandella and Scott Perunovich are the third pair. Again, the goalies, Binnington and Hofer. We'll see. Again, expecting Hofer. Islanders got to shut down that top line. And it'll be interesting to see whether Patrick Waugh matches lines, tries to get the third line with Casey Cizikas out there against the Blues top trio. It will be important, I think, in my mind, to do that. Thomas, Buchnevich, and Kyrou are dangerous. Can't overlook the second line, but that top line, it's important. And again, defensively, if I am the Islanders, I want either Adam Pelech or Ryan Pollock out there against the top line at all times. I don't want that top line for St. Louis on the ice against Sebastian Aho and Mike Riley. No offense to them, but defensively, they are a more vulnerable pairing. And the other thing is, according to some sources that I have seen, it looks like Ilya Sorokin will be in goal again for the Islanders. I think it's sort of deja vu from last year where we may be seeing a lot of Ilya Sorokin and only a little bit of right now of Semyon Varlamov down the stretch because the Islanders are in desperation mode. Big game. Let's hope that the Islanders' good play continues. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day, and today is the 47th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Brian Berard, the native of Woonsocket, Rhode Island, number one pick in the 1995 draft by the Ottawa Senators. That's first overall, but made his NHL debut with the Islanders and had 48 points in 82 games that year, won the Calder Trophy for the Islanders, followed that up with a 14-goal and 46-point season the next year, and then was traded midway through the 98-99 season to Toronto, briefly played for the Rangers, the Bruins, the Blackhawks, the Blue Jackets, and then back to the Islanders for the 07-08 season where he scored 5 goals and 22 points in 54 games. Suffered a really bad eye injury that cost him the entire 2000-2001 campaign, and he was able to come back, but obviously it definitely sidetracked his career. He did manage to play in 619 games, 76 goals, 323 points, and 500 penalty minutes. Add 20 playoff games, 2 goals, 10 points, but none of them were with the Islanders. One of Brian Berard's better games as an Islander, how about October 29th, 1997 at the Molson Center in Montreal. Islanders going with Eric Fichaud in goal against Jocelyn Thibault for the Canadiens. And in this game, Brian Berard assists on the first Islander goal, scored by Travis Green, of all people, on the power play. That made it 1-0 Islanders. And then after the Habs tied it, Ziggy Palffy scores on the power play. And again, Brian Berard on the assist. And then late in the second period, the Islanders go up 4-1 when Brian Berard scores on the power play. Robert Reichel and Ziggy Palffy with the assist there. Islanders go on to win it 5-2 for Brian Berard, a goal and 2 assists. He had 2 shots and played a little more than 18 minutes of ice time in this game. So Brian Berard, a very solid offensive defenseman whose career was unfortunately derailed a bit by injury. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we'll have our key takeaways from tonight's game against the Blues. We'll have the latest trade rumors and information. And of course, we'll have our weekly farm report if, and that's a big if, there is no trade news. So again, if there is big news before the game, we will let you know, and we may even do a quick update for you on that or a bonus episode. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Enjoy trade deadline week. It's always fun. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.